Hello, 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 everyone. We're just going to give it a few more minutes for others to join. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, everyone. Just giving it some time for everyone to join in. Welcome, welcome. We had a lot of people sign up for this session, so just want to make sure the numbers are going up. It's like a thermometer or something. It's trying to see how can we get to that top red bar. Hi. Hi, Laura. Hi, everyone. Hi, Pam from
Hi,
Pam. Hi. Okay. Yep, the number's creeping up. So it is 2:01. You guys okay with me giving one more minute for people to join in?
Sure, yeah.
Or a few
Works
more
for me.
seconds? Okay, great. Thanks. Once I see it stop pulling through. Okay. I think I'm going to start. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Annie Doresca, and I am the Chief Financial Officer of Jewelers of America. Happy to have everyone join us here. I'm pleased to welcome you to our latest episode of My Next Question, which is a collaboration between Jewelers of America and National Jeweler in terms of our webinar series. Today's topic is what to know about AI this holiday season. So a lot of buzz around this topic. This session is hosted by our very own Lenore Fedow, and it also features Jennifer Shaheen, President and CEO of Technology Therapy Group, and Dustin Lemick, founder and CEO at BriteCo. So thank you both for joining us. So before I turn it over to Lenore, just a few points for our attendees. If you have a question, there is a Zoom Q&A box. Please utilize that to share your questions. At the end of the discussion, I'll look into those and go through the questions with our experts here who are on the call with us. Also, this is being recorded, so the session will be available on the National Jeweler and the Jewelers of America website within the next, I think, 2 to 3 days. So just keep an eye out for that. I'll now turn it over to Lenore and our guests, and I'll be back at the end to share questions that need to be answered. All right. So again, welcome everyone.
Thank you so much, Annie. And thank you, Jennifer and Dustin, for joining us. We're super happy to have you. Today, we're going to be talking about how retailers can use AI to make the most of the holiday season. I want to start by letting you both introduce yourself and share a bit about your expertise. We can start with Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Lenore, and thank you, Annie, and thank you, National Jeweler and JA, for having me today. I really appreciate it. My company is Technology Therapy Group, and we're a full-service digital marketing support system for the jewelry industry. So we do education and training and setup and implementation. And it's actually one of the things that I love about talking about AI. I started my business in 1997, and I really thought technology was going to be a true competitive advantage for small businesses. And why I really wanted to have this conversation around AI in the jewelry space so much in this last year is because I really feel that this is now a new area where we have this opportunity to grow, because we're all almost at this like level playing field now. And if we can kind of see the excitement in it and the opportunities, then for me, this is a really big area for us to be growing as a community. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. And Dustin?
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I as well am super excited to have this conversation. AI is obviously insanely innovative technology. My name is Dustin Lemick. I'm the CEO of BriteCo. BriteCo is a jewelry and watch insurance company. We think of ourselves as an insurance technology company. We leverage technology in basically every facet of our business. We cater to retail jewelers, and we built a lot of really innovative technology for our jeweler partners. We also work direct to consumer. We do a pretty large online business, and then we also work with agents and brokers. And again, we specialize in jewelry insurance policies for consumers.
Awesome. Well, we're happy to have you both here today. Like I said, we're going to be talking about AI, so artificial intelligence, which is when machines or software mimic human intelligence. Some of you may be familiar with that. I know that definition might unsettle some people, but AI actually has a lot of cool possibilities, which we're going to get into today. So my first question is there AI tech that jewelers might already be using that they don't realize falls into that category? Whoever wants to jump in first.
Well, I guess I'll start if you're okay with that, Dustin.
Absolutely, go for it.
Okay, so most businesses, at least on the sides that we work on, and I think this will be really balanced, is most of you are using it already in tools like if you're using Google Ads, Facebook Ads, if you're using any kind of virtual assistant program. I just did a webinar ourselves and people asked if their note-taking systems could join, like Otter.ai. Even Microsoft Office has it worked into it. You might have even seen if you're using email marketing software, like Klaviyo or Constant Contact, most of them at this point have integrated components of artificial intelligence in there. And then, there are some places that I feel like it just may not always be obvious. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about some of these a little later, but I mean, we're starting to see obviously this emerge in some of the different platforms and the engines that exist.
And I can touch on that too. So I think, Jennifer, that's completely right. I do think that folks are using it right now, probably without even knowing it. I do think there's like a dramatic shift though that's currently happening where and we will, of course, we're going to get to this, but where the technology is going to a whole new place, and this generative AI, the new type of technology is really like next level kind of thing. And you can do all new different types of tasks. But I do agree. I think that there's a lot of folks that are using it and don't even quite realize they're using it. And I think we're going to get to a place where all of these platforms and systems are going to have some level of AI built into it. At BriteCo, we do build technology. We are starting to build specific small components, nothing huge right now. And that'll go into some strategies as well in terms of how folks should adopt this and like how to start adopting it.
So there are a lot of possibilities here. What is something unexpected, like one cool thing you can think of that retailers can use AI to do?
I could grab that. So before getting on this webinar, I was sort of brainstorming some things and trying some new things out that I just haven't done before. And one of the things that I was really attempting to do was, can I fully design an engagement ring from scratch using AI? And the answer is no, I couldn't fully do it, but I could get 3/4 of the way there. And so one of the things I thought was super interesting is I actually was prompting AI to come up with sketches for me. So imagining that I was going to create a 3-stone diamond engagement ring, and how a lot of folks would actually hand sketch things like that or use certain programs. I was actually prompting ChatGPT and DALL-E, text to image software that was helping me generate sketches for custom design. So I thought that was super, super interesting and pretty useful. I mean, like I said, 70% of the way there, 75% of the way there, but didn't go all the way there.
And how did they
And
come
I
out
think
looking? Sorry, just to interject, how did they come out looking?
Really good, really, really good. And it was generating like it was coming up with lots of different types of examples. So it wasn't just force feeding one thing. So like a 3-stone engagement, it was giving me different angles. It was giving me, so it was really interesting. And that is one of the tests coming into this that I was going to recommend for folks to try, because it's a good way to sort of, and it's relatively easy. So you can kind of get your feet wet pretty quick. And dare I say, it was sort of fun as well. So it was cool. I would tell folks to try it.
Very cool.
the image creation is definitely pretty interesting, the text to image. Actually, Canva has this already worked into it, which a lot of social media specialists are already using. And Adobe's actually just released Adobe Firefly. It's coming out of beta as well. So those are some tools. But one thing that's really interesting as I talk to the actual jewelers, it's important that we understand consumers, I think, are going to start to use some of these tools more and more to help get out of their heads what they're trying. But just kind of like I always joke around with architects and engineer, an architect might be able to imagine and design it, but the engineer will tell you if it's possible. So these tools may design some great things, but it's really important that, and as stores, you should be having these conversations with your customers that this is great, but that's not quite realistic because that's not how metal bends. Or we can't quite do that because that's not a shape a stone truly comes in when we cut it. So I do think that level setting customer expectations with these tools will be very important as they begin to use them.
Yeah, Jennifer, I mean, that's a great point. You do have to have that context in mind. 100% right. Because what I was actually trying to do was I was trying to get it to make a CAD for me. I was basically trying to say, can I get this
Right.
to a CAD? And the answer is no, you can't. You still need those CAD services and what is actually possible and not possible. It's a really good point, but I think the point that I was trying to make is basically from a creativity standpoint, it's really good to like help you come up with ideas or sort of look at things a little bit differently. That was one of the things that I was able to get out of it.
Cool.
Absolutely. And then Lenore, if I could expand a little bit more on the question, because one of the things that I think a lot of stores are really surprised about is that AI can help with other things that are front of the house, but also back of the house. So one of the front of the house things is customer service. I can't begin to tell you how many stores don't like to reply to reviews, and they don't always know how to reply, whether it's a good or bad one. And sometimes they just get in their own heads. So one of the things that we've been doing is showing stores how to use AI to learn their voice and actually reply to reviews, whether it be Google or Yelp or whatever. Another thing that you're going to start to see AI be wonderful for is data analysis on different platforms. So just like Dustin mentioned, like his company is working on things like this, but even platforms that are open, like if you're running a Shopify store, you're going to start to see, these data prediction components come out in these metric systems in the next year because they want you to be bought into their platform. So I think it's an important thing that we see that there's so many areas that we're going to be seeing AI being used, not just for image creation or content creation. We're going to see it from a customer service support area. We're going to see it from inventory management. We're going to see it for data analytics and prediction modeling to being much more cost effective than it used to be.
So many good points there, Jennifer. The one thing I wanted to touch on, we have a lot of I have a decent amount of experience in this particular arena is the customer service piece. I mentioned at BriteCo, we do a decent amount of direct online business. And so for any folks that are listening here that have that sell online, that have some e-commerce component to what they do, we actually have been training, and it's fully live now. We call her Emma, which is an AI chatbot. And she right now, we started slow. There's a training, there's a whole training process to make sure that, because sometimes when it comes to content, when it comes to prompts and things like that. One big concern just is this idea of hallucination. AIs can actually hallucinate and give you the wrong information. So it's really important not to let AI kind of go wild. So they're always, at least from my perspective, in the current environment, there needs to be some level of human oversight. So there has to be fact checking or checking what's going on. It can't just be like, hey, this right now, we're not in a place where it's just like turn the AI on, let it work. It's not there yet. There might be a time where it'll get there, but now it's like it's sort of the way I think of it. You'll hear people talk about AI companions or things like that, where it's sort of just there as like an assistant for you.
So use, just not to cut you off, but the term AI companion, I've seen that utilized a lot. And I think Jennifer, you touched upon like Canva having AI and Adobe having AI. Is that what you all mean when you're saying AI companion? Like what is that piece doing in these platforms that people utilize every day?
Yeah. Companion, you'll hear Copilot a lot. Yeah, and that's exactly right. It's like an assistant almost, where it's there to like, you can feed it, you can prompt it, and it'll do a lot of assisting, but you have to really direct it. So one thing that I would encourage everybody to work on if you're using ChatGPT or Bard is prompting. So how you actually interact with it is really, really important. So if you have ChatGPT and you're going to go on there and you don't really know how to prompt it, or you're not prompting it correctly, you're probably not going to get a positive result. But if you start, and some of it takes some finesse. If you start asking it the right questions in the right way, all of a sudden you'll be getting responses that are like, wow, okay, this is helpful. So there's all this kind of art plus science that goes into it.
Great,
Yeah,
thank
that's
you.
super interesting. Did I cut
The
you off,
most
Jennifer?
important thing we have to, oh, no, it's fine. I think the most important word we do have to remember is train. Machine learning is a very important word to remember because the machine has to learn, and to learn, it has to be trained. And, that's why actually starting with consistent, repetitive tasks are great, but even learning your voice for replying to reviews, or to your point, like one of the things, I have a client who's been training his chatbot to understand how to reply to messages to make it easier for them to have responses come up between those times of 5 p.m. and 6 a.m. the next day. So they are not losing opportunities.
Now, you both mentioned ChatGPT, which is a form of AI most retailers will have heard of already, even if they're not particularly tech savvy. Do you think ChatGPT in particular is going to play a bigger role this holiday season in retail?
I do to a degree. I still think there's a lot of testing that folks are doing and kind of getting familiar and acquainted with it. I would recommend to all jewelers or retailers or folks that are listening to this to try to use it for the holiday season. I think it can be really, really beneficial. If we're specifically talking about ChatGPT, there's a bunch of different strategies in terms of how you use it. The one thing I really do caution and tell people is, start slow. Like, this is not one of those things that you want to all of a sudden say, hey, I'm going to start using ChatGPT in every single facet of my business and everything I do. It's the wrong strategy, I think, to look at this. It's like, start using it in confined capacity. And I could give some examples in terms of how I would start trying to use it a little bit. And then I do think it becomes impactful for the holiday season. Jennifer, you mentioned like analyzing data and things like that. I think it's ChatGPT and there's other tools that are really good at analyzing. So here, let me give you an example. Point of sale systems, like POS systems that are tracking your sales data. You can actually extract your sales data, put it into ChatGPT, and say, hey, provide me with some insights. Again, how you prompt it is really important. How you talk to it is important. So you could say something like, I'm going to give you sales figures from the last 3 months. And I would like you to analyze those sales figures and please tell me what are the common price points, what are this, and you can start small, but you can also go pretty in depth, and or you can just leave it open ended and say, please provide me with any insights you can get from this data. And then it'll give you some insights, and then you'll say, that's interesting. Let me like drill into that part. It said something that was really hit something for me. And then you could keep kind of going back and forth and massaging it. And then hopefully at the end of the day, you're pulling out some interesting insights that you can actually be actionable to better manage your inventory and things like that.
So ChatGPT is something I've been talking about for a while. I actually did a presentation at JCK on getting started with this, and then another one at the Atlanta Jewelry Show this year. And I really do find that this is a tool that more stores should be doing, and they absolutely can use it in time for the holidays. A couple of ways I recommend, just some takeaways from today. One thing is, first off, remember that ChatGPT 4 is 5 times better than 3.5. So it is worth investing in the paid version. I always remind people that the unpaid version is the one that is often very repetitive. And I always say my copywriters don't ever have to worry about being out of a job, because ChatGPT, even at 4.0, their sentence structure is lacking. We kind of tease. But it is a great way for idea generation. I had a store person in marketing say to me she really enjoys using ChatGPT for idea generation, because she said, sometimes I'm by myself and being creative alone is exhausting. And I really find that is what is happening with individuals in stores, is if they're the marketing person, they're also maybe on the sales floor. They might even do some of the bookkeeping depending upon the size of the store. So I would definitely recommend, it's a great place to start with, idea generation. The second takeaway that I really want to bring up is with ChatGPT 4, you can leverage the plugins. And I do think it's also worth looking at some of the plugins. And one of the things that we do want to be mindful of is, remember, search engine optimization, working on our websites and content. There are now really great tools that you can put into ChatGPT as a plugin to help you with being better at optimizing your own website for content, staying on top of the trends of keywords that people are searching for. So it's not just about generative content creation, but it's also now, with these partnerships that ChatGPT is creating, this opportunity for us to not do everything with it, but there's definitely some places where we could all use a little help, especially if you're the individual in the department who needs just a bounce partner. I feel like that's exactly what it's become.
Yeah, that's a super interesting point. And I mean, you both have brought up a lot of positive benefits for retailers for using this technology, but it's still relatively new. There's a bit of a learning curve. And so there's some hesitancy, I would say, among retailers. What would you say to a retailer who is unsure about using AI?
I could start on that. It's like really like anything else in life. It's and like I mentioned it before, it's kind of just about getting started. It's just about giving it a shot. Don't try to do too much with it out of the gates. Start small. So like, think of something that, I mean, you could even use the example that I just gave. Jennifer has a great example of like, use it to be creative, to bounce things off of. And you can even come up with hypothetical type examples. So I'll give you one. If I was going to be planning a holiday party for my best clients in December, and I wanted to use ChatGPT to come up with some ideas of, I don't want to just throw a party. I want it to be like a campaign, right? I want it to be a comprehensive campaign. So I will ask ChatGPT and say, look, this is what I'm trying to do. I want to have a holiday party for my customers, and I want to have it on my store. And this is kind of what I'm thinking. Can you give me some more ideas to build a more comprehensive campaign around it? Maybe you can prompt it and say, I might want to do a mailer, or I want to do a social media campaign in conjunction with it. Please give me some ideas. So just that alone, like somebody can go into ChatGPT right now and do something hypothetical thing like that and see what it gives you. And then you sort of can start interacting with it. Those are the small little steps to take to start understanding and getting comfortable using it. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, that worked, or like, that's really interesting. And then you can start really having fun with it. So for me, it's really about just kind of jumping in. Don't try to do too much with it. Start kind of having fun with it. It actually is really fun to play with it. So that's what I would say is start, have fun, and give it a shot.
One of the ways actually I want to ask Lenore is, when we talk about AI, we've been talking about ChatGPT and some other things, but like there's other opportunities and other tools out there that one thing we always have to remember about ChatGPT is it is an open source system. So when anything you put into it, you're feeding that engine. So I always want to remind people of that because you do want to be mindful of what you put into it. Don't put things that are proprietary for your store. Very, very important. So you may want to look at other tools that are paid and make sure you're paying attention to their compliance policies and how they share their learnings. I think that's one of the reasons that people hold back in trying some of these tools is the fear. But I want to mention you need to understand that not just the open tools have AI and there's so many others now. And so I do like us to be thinking about that. One of the ways that I really love using ChatGPT nowadays is to help people write product descriptions. I use this as an example in my session, but a good product description should talk about so many different things. And that is actually what your prompting should be, is to say, I want my product description to have this tone, this personality. I wanted to point out these things about the product and give it the details, and we'll write it with that tone, that personality, and punch out those things. And you can even narrow it down into the appropriate character lengths, etc. So that's, again, one of those chats you would keep using because you would be training it, because your product descriptions from page to page to page should not vary in tone or personality. And once you get it right, it will be a lot easier, and then you don't have to rewrite it. And I have to say, a lot of my copywriters appreciate that. The one thing they don't love writing is the repetitive tasks. So it's a great way to bring it in slowly, but also keep people knowing that you value human intelligence as well.
Now, as you were talking about that, and we're talking about the holiday season, do you both recommend this being a way to utilize during for like social media posts? Is that another way that they can utilize it if you want to start slowly into it? I know that's how I started. And it helped a little bit. And you're right, it is very, very fun.
Yeah.
Annie,
Sorry, Jennifer.
Apologies. That's okay, Annie, I agree. And one thing I do is actually ask it to rate an emotional version, a logic version, a value version. So you can actually then play around with what works better, what's connecting more. This is the marketer who likes to be strategic and test things. So it's not just give me 5 different types of social media posts about, diamond engagement rings. It's more, give me a logical perspective and give it a little detail. Give me something more. So this is where a human adds to the AI so much more than just give me social media posts about engagement rings. Because then it'll give you the same style, right?
Yeah, and I think that's right. And social media is a great use case for it, because something that is, to Jennifer, to your point, is repetitive, right? You're almost talking about putting some boundaries, or like a template, right? So you're saying, this is the template. So for a product description, you're saying, I'm always going to give it these types of data. And then I would like the to extract, or the output to be a paragraph form, right? So like we do this a lot. I mean, with content, this is great, where it's like you basically have a template. It saves tons of time. So one of the big takeaways should be that if you're using AI and a lot of these tools properly, it's insanely efficient. So it basically takes, repetitive tasks is just one example. There's all of these different other examples, but it'll take these repetitive tasks of you doing, over and over and over the same kind of thing, and you can template it, put it into a template form. And you could also tell it, like Jennifer just said, which is brilliant, which is use this type of voice. And you can basically give it rules. You can give it different types of rules to play by. So you can even tell it, talk like this particular famous person, talk like Justin Bieber. Like, I don't know, like you can get and it will do that, which is wild, mind blowing, but that's kind of the power of it.
That I'm going to try.
I have not tried that yet, by the way. I might have to now that I just threw that out. I might have to and say, okay, what is this going to do?
Maybe not Justin Bieber, but I have a few ideas. But that's
all right. So fill in your favorite celebrity.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's easier to be creative when your time is freed from having to do more of these mundane tasks that take a lot of energy. So now we've spoken about some hesitancy on the part of retailers, but I want to talk a bit about consumer sentiment about AI. Where do you think that is right now? How is your average consumer feeling about it?
So it will really depend on whose report you read. Honestly, I read so many of them, and it blends. You have some numbers around this, like 46% of people are buying into AI, and then you'll see that there's 60% of people who are concerned about AI. So it really does depend on what report you read. And I do think that what you're seeing with the general consumer is they like it for what they want to use it for, and they're afraid for what it will take away from their lives or their jobs, etc. And I think we all are. So what do I mean by that? Like, there was a great NPR article done in September all about how now people are using it, and they call it Dr. ChatGPT, where they're using it to do what they did with Google, where they Google their symptoms, and now they're using ChatGPT for this. So I think, and you're hearing doctors complain about this, like they did about Dr. Google, right? But I think that's where we lie. Like, we're just like we don't 100% always trust every search result we get. I find that the consumer conversation around lots of things around AI relate to what it is, and there's this line of skepticism and concern, but there definitely is a thirst for trying it and playing with it for a myriad of different things. And the better it gets, the more the sentiment, I believe, will shift.
I think that it does very much depend, and I think it depends on like the customer base. From my perspective, a lot of the younger folks are using it more heavily. But I do think that it's still just being used more as I see it being used as a research tool. So I think that might be something that retailers might want to just pay attention to. More prompting, asking about some of the creative questions, but really I see it being used as a research tool. So if somebody's looking for an engagement ring and doing research on an engagement ring, they might be using ChatGPT to some degree to say, okay, coming up with either ideas for designs or potentially even doing research on stones, quality, all of those kinds of things, and might be asking it for some suggestions or recommendations. It's actually quite good at that too. But I agree, like it still is, there's a fact checking component of it where, like I mentioned hallucination before, like that's a real thing, and it could give wrong information. It somewhat regularly could give the wrong information. So that is also something to be very mindful of. So if I had a customer who was using it and they could come in and say, well, I was on ChatGPT and this is what it told me, and it could be completely wrong. So something else to be mindful of.
Okay, so copywriters and fact checkers will still be employed. That's good to know.
Yes.
So, Jen, while you were going through the AI reports, I've been reading different holiday sales reports, trying to figure out what the retail sales forecast is for the season. And as I was going through the holiday report from Salesforce, they were saying that the savviest retailers will tap predictive and generative AI to win this holiday season. What are those, and what should retailers know about them?
First off, thank you for this, because I just finished my MIT course this summer on no-code AI, which was very interesting. And I think one thing we really have to understand is just a reminder that ChatGPT and Dolly, that is generative AI. And what that is essentially, it is creating content assets that you use, whereas predictive AI is leveraging historical data. So forecasting outcomes. you are starting to see these types of tools, as I mentioned to you earlier. And I think probably Dustin might even say this is something he would build into his own application, right? Is this idea of using predictive AI to help with inventory management, customer churn. So even with all your own data that you have in your point of sale system, now starting to leverage that with some new tools so that you'd be able to see, will this customer actually come back, or what percentage of your customers will come back? We're also starting to see the predictive AI in recommendation engines, very specifically more and more as we get into what is often referred to as hyper personalization. And we can do that because of the data that we've stored. So I believe that within this industry right now, there aren't as many of those predictive AI tools. I do know like Balance to Buy Big is a program that a lot of stores will use and designers use. But we're right now, I do think within this industry, it's getting going. I think as we're growing, we're going to see that not only within our own industry, but this is no surprise why Google, by the way, shifted from Universal Analytics to what's GA4, which is a whole different way of tracking information, because they're now looking at being able to do predictive patterns, and so are other applications out there. So we may have to buy into those in the future, but that's definitely where the world of metrics is going for all platforms, social, search, everything.
What's the quick question, Jennifer? So in terms of
Yeah.
generative, predictive, are there like a slew of different types of AIs, or is it just a short list? Are those the only two? Just curious for everyone to know.
No, there are actually other ones. They're the ones that actually are growing that people are more afraid of. So when you see the term generative AI, what Congress is interested in getting involved with now is more in this world of generative AI. But if you read the language closely, they start to talk about general AI. And general AI is not the same as generative AI. And then also see, you heard, sentient AI is that next level, which sounds like very much like Terminator, and it kind of is, and it does concern you. But when we talk about, there are definitely different types of AI models depending upon which industry and environment you're looking at. So for the purpose of today, obviously we're talking about a lot of generative AI, but I definitely think predictive is something more and more we should be involved in this industry, because it will give us a sense of trends in diamonds and gemstones and gold versus platinum. Definitely paying attention to historical data trends that we can be building on top of.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So as I was also going through the holiday reports, I saw that, no surprise here, online shopping is going to be a really popular way of getting gifts this year. So Jen, you were talking a little bit about personalization, which I'm sure could help with this, but how else can AI improve the online shopping experience?
So I think personalization is actually probably the biggest one. And if you look at some of the players out there, it's almost one of the things that people feel Amazon is falling down on, is they're losing their edge, where this is an area Walmart is actually growing a lot on. And I know most of you are like, we're not Amazon or Walmart, but the thing is that human expectations come from these larger companies, and so we do need to be paying attention to those. And so other areas of AI that are really going to be growing, not only because of those platforms, but because of Google and Pinterest, is visual searches. Visual search, I do foresee being something that you're going to start to want to think about in 2024, because it's so much easier for us to upload something that we've seen from our phones to search. And we've been training that AI for quite a while to be able to identify images pretty easily. And some of the other areas that we could actually be looking at right now are probably within some of your own email marketing systems, where you could just be starting to organize and clean up your own data as a way to begin some of those hyper personalization areas. They're just wonderful for SMS and that direct connection. I mean, 65% of people are willing to give you their information to have a more streamlined and personal relationship with the business. So it's an important thing to remember. It's even though those privacy laws coming up everywhere, I do think it's important for us to remember that people want a personalized experience and they know they have to give up something to get it. So don't shy away from going in that direction.
And I could also add, I mean, for me, and I've there's a lot of literature out there about sort of the low-hanging fruit, I think, is customer service. Customer service is obviously anyone who's called into any of these mega companies, AT&T, et cetera, and gets stuck into the cycle, right? The customer service cycle. AI can be really, really helpful with that. So if you do, and I know I mentioned it, but I think it's worth reiterating. If you are an e-com company or you're trying to build out an e-com business, customer service is obviously critical. There are what we've found is like we get asked the same questions over and over and over. So those you can definitely streamline, right? And like I said before, there's a training process, but there's all of these products out there that literally will give you the chatbot, and you can then start giving it some of your own data and start training it and saying, here is a question we get all the time. Now, again, it will not do 100% of what you need. We believe there's always that kind of human component backstop. But if you can eliminate, let's just say you get a lot, like you want to keep building your e-com business, but there's just too much activity. There's too many questions, too much going on. Well, maybe if you can take 40%, that's a big number. Let's say 20% off of your plate, and then you build up to 40, 50%, where a lot of that customer service dialogue is getting automated through. It's really helpful, right? That can create pretty big efficiencies. Same thing with like email, with email support, right? So I was kind of talking about chat support, but what about email support? Jennifer mentioned earlier about replying to reviews. Super important, right? Like I think everybody should reply to reviews. And I think using AI in the same way you would for the reviews to respond to email inquiries and have sort of some standardization in process. Again, this isn't something that you would build from scratch. There's actually products out there that are AI built products that will, and if anyone has any questions, I can make some recommendations after, just ping me. But yeah, this is very like feasible. And so I do think customer service is sort of really that low hanging fruit.
Sorry. So as cool as this tech is, incorporating new technology can be a bit costly. How can AI actually reduce costs? I'm going to throw this last question to Dustin.
So I think one of the best parts about this particular wave of AI is that you're seeing a lot of open source, close to free. So like, I do agree with Jennifer, you should go with the paid ChatGPT 4 version. It's much, much better. But it's still, I forget how much it is, but it's relatively inexpensive. So a lot of these products that are being released, some of the chat products I was mentioning, they're not super expensive. So, okay, so you're paying a monthly fee. It's not super expensive, but creates all this efficiencies. Eventually, it supplements how much somebody can be productive in their workday. So somebody who's spending a lot of time doing some tasks that can be automated, it's not going to completely take over that person's job. But so it will create all of these efficiencies. And so analyzing data, right? Like efficiencies in marketing, in like if you're doing copyright, some of the things we talked about already, like planning things, like it can speed up that whole process, and other resources. So I think actually it's not very expensive, I don't believe. And I think that it can create all of these efficiencies that will end up mostly, I think time savings is what I see right now, is it creates efficiencies to save time. Time is money, right? So that's sort of what I see.
Yeah, that's definitely a fair point. All right, well, that is it for my questions. I appreciate you both being here so much. And now I'm going to turn it over to Annie to close us out and get the Q&A started.
Yes, thank you all. It was a great discussion, and you actually have questions that came in before the session started. So I'm going to go through those and then those that are in the chat. So one of the questions was, what are the AI tools? What AI tools are proven to maximize productivity, customer engagement, and transactional commerce, which include performance reports? So like, what are some AI tools that you could recommend for productivity and customer engagement? Either one of you can take that.
So I think Jennifer hit on some good ones. Like, I think some of the current products in the market, GA4, definitely, like the AI power behind GA4 is amazing. Like, I mean, it's Google, right? So they're pretty powerful. So there's that. ChatGPT, Dolly is the text to image product that I was mentioning before.
Yeah.
Bard, which is Google's version of ChatGPT, which I love. So these are like really kind of the really top level, the top level.
Okay. And that, go ahead.
Sorry. No, go ahead, Amy.
No, I was going to say, someone asked about the best ChatGPT apps for jewelry. I think it goes along the same lines with those. The next question was, how do you use AI for growth? I know you all did cover that, but just to kind of phrase it in a brief segment, how do you use AI for growth?
So one thing that I think that we didn't mention that I think is worth mentioning here, it's a really good question. Market analysis, like competitive analysis and market analysis. So if you're looking at growing into different segments, let's say, or you're looking to take on a different line of business, and you're interested in doing some research around the market or that segment, you can use AI to do that research for you. So like a lot of this market research is a great way, and then you use that to say, okay, I've sort of proven out that this is the strategy seems to be sound, and then you use that to grow. So those would be some ways I would recommend.
Great. Did you have something you wanted to add to that, Jennifer?
No, there was actually pretty much the same thing. I mean, business planning applications that have AI in them have been, really helpful. I'm actually in the process of using one right now for doing a loan for a bank. So there's, so much out there. And I like the paid ones for this, again, to protect the data that I'm putting into it. So that's absolutely definitely a great place to look.
Okay. Probably have like another 9 questions, so we'll try to get to as many as possible. You guys are popular. So our virtual jewelry,
we appreciate it.
Yeah, our virtual jewelry and jewelry NFTs becoming something every jeweler should look into.
So I don't know where you are on the NFT world, Dustin, but obviously this was like all the rage at the beginning of 2020, and now it's not a conversation that lots of people are having anymore. I would say right now the metaverse as it is, it still exists. It's just not growing at the speed many companies were banking on. So from my personal perspective, I would say it's a market you should be paying attention to, but I don't know that it's quite where any of us expected it to be by 2023. And or is it poised to be as strong for 2024 at this moment?
Okay, great. So the next question.
I see the head nod.
He's like, yeah, that's good. From my experience, advertising assets created from AI just feel like that. How do you overcome this? Are there any specific recommendations?
Jennifer, you want to grab this? This is right in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure. So I love the question. I think authenticity is always going to be, rule 1 for social, period. Real photographs, playing with them with AI components like stickers, and even taking a real photo and, using it as a way to change its appearance, put a different spin on it, create characters are fun ways of leveraging it. But I will say social media through to this day, every platform, if it is not a real video or a real photo, does not do well. So I agree with you don't want to leverage completely, computer generated. Other ways you can do this is to use it as a blend between yours and theirs. So if you're needing some filler, then that's where something like that can come in handy. And there's some great tools that do for you for video, where you might do part of it being a video in your store and then a crossover to a pre-designed video, and it will help you voice over, it will help you do the music. And all of these usually are, because they're within a paid system, copyright or royalty free elements. So that is something I do want to bring up too, because I like to protect our artists out there.
Great. I think that's a very important point. Thank you for that. Then the next question is, how does an e-commerce company use AI?
I think Jennifer nailed it with product descriptions. I think that using it as a template and standardizing it to some degree, and then you can put your own spin on it. I think the authenticity and sort of still having your own voice in whatever you're doing is really important. But yeah, I think it could also analyze some of your pages. So if you're trying to optimize a page for SEO, like you can actually use, and some of these plugins in ChatGPT can actually read web pages, and Bard could definitely read web pages. So it can analyze your pages and say, okay, and give you recommendations. And you might have a layout, you might have a product page layout that's not optimized. So it could actually give you recommendations that you can then dig in and say, okay, I need to actually fix this page. I need to move this H1 up, or this H1 needs to change, or what headers need to change, and also A/B testing, which is a whole different world, which we won't have time to get into, but AI can help a lot in A/B testing. We do a ton of it at BriteCo. We will have our standard page, and then we will use AI to give us some suggestions in terms of this is how you might want to consider potentially optimizing the page. And then we would test it against each other. We do a lot of that. It's really important. So
cool.
Yeah, so those would be some ways that you could help your e-commerce your website.
Okay, great. Thank you. Justin, I think this next question that came in during the session is for you. It was, I think, when you talked about utilizing ChatGPT to design an engagement ring, you said 75% of it was accomplished. And this question was, well, what was the 25% that it could not do?
Yeah, so I always, when I do something, I always try to set a goal for what I'm trying to do. My goal was to get a CAD image out of it, and that was impossible. And I was just trying to stretch it. I was just trying to see how far I could take it. What it did do, and I was putting myself in sort of the retailer mentality, and I was pretending like I had a engagement ring appointment coming up, and I wanted to come up with some sketches and some ideas, and so what I did was I basically used it to give me a whole bunch of output of different ideas and different sketches. Again, you have to, it's just a creative, imaginative thing. And then I would use those and say, okay, this is what I'm going to present to a client. And they're beautiful. And they would take maybe 15 minutes, maybe, to generate all of this. That's where it stopped. So anything after that, like coming up with a CAD or anything like that. But I saw it as being like, this could be really, really useful in an engagement ring or some sort of a presentation where I'm, have a meeting with a customer trying to sell them an engagement ring. So that's where it kind of stopped.
Yep, cool. The next question, maybe Jennifer, you can answer this one too, is what are some tips and tricks that they can use for AI for the business? Like, what are some quick tips and tricks?
Sure. So one that I want to chat about that we haven't really talked much about is voice generated AI. And why I want to bring it up is because I actually love the idea that when you're a local business, people connect with the people in the store. So recording team members, and then if they're not available to do the next voice recording that has to go on your on hold music or anything, this is a great way to use voice generated AI because it will now know their cadence in their voice. And if you need to switch out that message, but that person's not around. So that's kind of a fun, different one. We've talked about a couple of others that I think are helpful, but worth reviewing. So one thing that I find is really helpful is to use a tool like ChatGPT, but you can use ChatGPT to review not only competitors' voice and tone, but your own, so that you can check and make sure the information that you're putting in. So sometimes one of the best things you can do is just to take content and put it into the system and then ask it questions off that content. It's a really helpful way for you to make sure that if you're trying to communicate to your staff something and you're happy with the copywriting that has been done, but you're not a specialist, it's a great way for you to get something back to say, this is the tone of this content. You know, this is what I want it to look like. And then the other thing I like to use it for is comparison contrast. So if someone says, well, a competitor down the street does this, you can always copy their content and your content and ask ChatGPT to pull out the 5 points that are different between, the two sets of content. We actually used that recently with reviewing an Airbnb contract to say, is there anything in here that we need to be aware of? So especially if they're long and you just, aren't always clear about like what to pull out quickly. And if you skim and you don't read, you're going to miss something. And we're human. We always.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
And Annie, I could throw in 2 more ideas.
Yeah.
I know a handful of jewelers that do like remote appointments, and they'll use Zoom. Zoom has a feature which is an AI companion for Zoom. You literally just turn it on, and it will be your note taker on Zoom, but it'll also give you like action items. Somebody mentioned Otter.ai. Otter's great too, and it will give you a summary afterwards, but also give you action items so you don't forget something or anything like that. So that would be something else you could possibly use it for. And the one other one I wanted to mention was somebody told me this, and I was like, that's pretty smart. They went in and they pulled off all of their reviews from wherever they're getting reviews from, like Google and Trustpilot, whatever. They pulled them all, put them into ChatGPT, and said, tell me what are the common themes in these reviews. And it would literally analyze all the reviews and say, you're doing this really good, but you're not doing this really. Some of this stuff you might know, but also it will sort of surface that for you. Yeah.
I like that. I even like that. Someone did send a question about the Zoom AI companion, and this would have been an opportunity to test it. So I thought that was cool. All right. So I probably have time for maybe 2 questions. Another one was, can we also mention how AI can be used to detect credit card fraud for online shopping? I don't know.
That's a tough one. I don't have any experience with that. I think my guess, and this is just a total random guess, Jennifer, you might have more experience around this, but I think that would be difficult, but my true answer is I don't know.
Actually, so Stripe has integrated that in. You have to opt into it. And there are third parties. And though they don't tell you the detail behind it, remember that Stripe is now the credit card processor that runs all the processing for Shopify. So, remember you asked about predictive analytics earlier. So what Stripe is doing with AI is they know all the credit card numbers and they know how many, cashbacks or, recalls on a particular card. So they're using their predictive modeling in their system. So is it something you can do? Probably not. But remember, they're looking at this is where big data comes in handy. And they're running through all of that to say, okay, we've noticed suspicious kinds of activities with a particular card. So we're going to put this as a medium or a high for fraud. So that is sometimes why it does help if you look at certain providers. And that's usually what they're doing is they're basically just, using their collective data.
Okay. It's 2:59. I think that one of the other questions was around give an example how to utilize ChatGPT-4, but I think someone gave a few prompt examples. There were questions around specifics to using words that are under scrutiny by the industry, like how do we do that? But I don't think we'll have time for them, but I do appreciate the fact that with so many great questions, it just shows how engaging this session was. So thank you both, Dustin and Jennifer, for your expertise. Thank you, Lenore, for leading and asking the questions. Thank you all that joined in, whether through the recording that you will hear later or live. We have our My Next Question that will return on Tuesday, November 7th at 2 p.m. And that topic is on screen. It is unwrapping social media and its tips for the holiday season, which will be facilitated by Jewelers of America's Amanda Gizzi and National Jewelers Lauren McClemmer. So thank you all and take care. Much appreciated. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Annie. Bye,
everyone.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.